and working with colleagues on that bill in the months to come. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Speaker.
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Oh, thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, big sing out and shout out to Michael Wood, who's resumed his seat. Thanks for the acknowledgement, Michael Wood. I found the revenue portfolio a very interesting one, and I'm sure it's testing the Honourable Stuart Nash. It's certainly one which I think is often underestimated because of the fact that our tax system, for it to work, needs a highly organised administration in the Revenue Department, but also it needs to have tax laws that are easy to operate and easy to administer. So this bill is one which the National Party will be opposing. There are parts of the bill which we can agree with, but the majority, particularly those around increasing tax rates and also the ring fencing of losses for residential properties that are rented out, are things that we cannot support. I think it's really important to remember that the current government and opposition were very loud about the needs to slap down on attack speculators of land. And we've heard Mr Wood refer to the speculators of land who he sees as taking properties that first home buyers could buy and therefore keeping them out of the market. Well, these so-called speculators of properties that first home buyers might otherwise want to buy are actually generally landlords to, guess what, people who would one day like to become first home buyers. And it's these landlords that this bill is attacking when it goes after the ring fencing of losses, which basically means that it will become even less attractive for one to become a landlord. Because what we're seeing at the moment with these sorts of measures, as are contained in this bill, is a constant and dedicated attack from the government against landlords. So these are the very people who provide the rental accommodation where the rental accommodation for people who don't want to or who can't yet buy their own home. So by taking more landlords out of the market, it's not that we're freeing up properties. What we're doing is we're actually having fewer properties available for rent, which is why this government is currently staggering under the biggest increase in state rental waiting lists that we have seen in my lifetime, and certainly in the last probably 100 years. That includes Winston Peters' lifetime. And I actually think that it is really important that we understand that and this House understands that there are consequences to what seems like a really good soundbite. And the soundbite of going after speculators and stopping them taking homes that first home buyers could buy is a great soundbite, but the consequences are that there are fewer homes available for people to rent. We see today the government saying, well, you know, it's such a shame that rentals have gone up in price, that the market is moving. And the reason the market is moving up in the costs of rentals for people who want to rent properties, this is one of the reasons for it. It's not only that the government has taken steps to remove the cost of letting fees being charged to tenants directly, but it's this sort of ring fencing losses contained in this bill that actually makes rental, being a landlord, significantly less attractive to somebody who has perhaps saved up all their lives, got themselves in a position where they can buy something that they want for what they call their retirement income. Rental properties at the moment, residential, someone is lucky to get, a landlord's lucky to get more than 4% return if we take away the cost of interest, the costs of rates, the costs of maintenance, the costs of everything else, having downtime. 4 to 5% is all people will generally expect to get on one of those rental properties. That's barely enough to pay the costs. We already have landlords saying, well, we used to be able to say, well, they'd get some capital gain. Well, that's being taken away. We've got a government now hell-bent on taxing every way that they can to do what? I can tell that member who's resumed his seat, who told us about what he said the Honourable Amy Adams was apparently all against. Well, I tell you what, we're against $700,000 a day being spent on inquiries to tell the government what to do. I would have thought it'd be a lot cheaper for the people of New Zealand to expect this government just to do its job. If they really need to ask some advice on something, make it something worthwhile, and a few of those inquiries are. But there can't be when there's 210, I think, at the moment, may even be more by now. And they've only been in government for a year. So when I see the taxes being spent on things like that, I'm with the Honourable Amy Adams. I'm with her saying, hang on, there's a bit of waste going on here. When I look at the billions of dollars being given to our colleague over the way, the Honourable Shane Jones, to splash around the particular parts of the country where New Zealand First think there might be some votes for them, I have to say, I think that that's possibly a bit of wastage going on. Some of it, no doubt, is needed. But when I look and consider that we've had, what was it, $160,000 worth of seedlings chopped up and mulched because nobody worked out that the land wasn't ready for them to go into, be planted into, I'd say that's a bit of wastage. I'd also say, too, with these tax bills and this particular issue, I'd say that paying the head of Kiwi Build to stay at home so far for 6.5 weeks is probably a bit of wastage. I'm just questioning how much is the salary. How much is the salary? How long is the contract for? Is it a 3-year contract? Is it a 5-year contract? Is it a salary of $300,000 a year? How much is the taxpayer going to be up for? Because that's what this money, these taxes are going for. When I look at student fees, the first year of student tertiary fees now being completely funded by the taxpayer, I'd say, is this fair? Well, maybe not, actually, when we consider that already 70% of a university fee for a year, for a university student's fee, is already funded by the taxpayer. Before this came in, this new fees-free policy for the first year, many people, when I'm around the country talking to people, and particularly in my electorate, say to me in Papakura, they say to me, well, if you're going to give somebody free, why wouldn't you give it for the last year? Once they've got their degree, give them a refund. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you say to them, hey, thank you for finishing? Wouldn't you put an incentive in there? And the answer is, coming from the other side, somebody is calling out, somebody, I'm not sure the name, somebody will tell me, that actually that he said something about, well, because they need some money or something. Well, there's student allowances, there's interest-free loans, there's almost everything. And what about the plumbers? We need more plumbers, we need more builders, we need more electricians, we need more gyp stoppers, we need more people who do things. Something that this government doesn't seem to understand. None of this bill is about helping people to do things. It's all about taking away from anybody who actually wants to supply housing to people who need to rent it. Taking away from people who are getting $1,060 on average, the average earner and their tax cuts. Take that away, because we don't want people having their own money. Why can't people have more of their own money? Everything in here is all about taking more money from hard-working New Zealanders who are trying to save up for their retirement, hard-working New Zealanders, and spend it on things that this government thinks it's best able to spend money on. I say to this government, there has to be an end to constantly taxing everything that moves. It has to be an end to this, because people are getting sick and tired of it. They've already got fuel taxes basically for Africa, frankly, and in Auckland, fuel taxes for Phil Goff and Phil Twyford to sort themselves out and try and get themselves something built. Fuel taxes and other taxes going in to pay for a trolley up Dominion Road that nobody so far, apart from Jacinda Ardern, wants to ride on. Nobody's asking the taxpayers, is that a fair use of their money? And we on this side will continue to stand up for taxpayers, and we are going to hold this government to account, and we will not agree if we don't agree that's in the best interest of New Zealand. So this party will stand up against further tax increases and further attacks on landlords who are, by the way, providing the houses and the housing for people that this government has left behind and will not provide them for because they simply can't.
Fletcher,
Thanks, Mr Speaker, for this opportunity to speak on this legislation. I'd first